He was living an amazing life. Alex Murdaugh, born with a silver spoon in his mouth, was one of the most influential attorneys in the Low Country of South Carolina. His family ruled the criminal and civil courts for years as generations of Murdaugh men served as the local solicitor, deciding who would and who would not be prosecuted. Then they earned millions of dollars controlling one of the most powerful personal injury firms around. He had a sprawling estate, a beach home, and enjoyed lavish trips around the country and around the world. Then his world came crashing down. First, his son Paul crashed the family boat, killing Mallory Beach. Then his financial fraud was uncovered by his law firm. His career and financial world was falling apart. Then he annihilated his own family by gunning down his son Paul and his wife Maggie. Then he staged an attempt on his own life. And finally, he sat in court as the prosecution exposed all of his criminal behavior for the world to see as he was convicted of double murder. Today, he was back in court being sentenced once again for all of his state financial crimes. And tonight, we are live from the Low Country with all the big moments as we continue our investigation of America's most notorious former lawyer, Alex Murdaugh.
I'm Vinny Politan. Thank you so much for joining us tonight here on Closing Arguments. Great to have you aboard. I still don't trust him, Alex Murdaugh. Doesn't matter what he says. Doesn't matter what he says, what he does. I do not trust him now and will never trust him. I always will think in the back of my mind he's got some ulterior motive, some plan B that he's working on, and somehow is trying to manipulate people and manipulate the system. That's what he's proven to me. That's exactly what he's proven to me, and that's still what I feel and I hear when he speaks. Now, today he was speaking. He was back in front of Judge Newman, perhaps for the last time. Should be for the last time, but who knows? Who knows with Alex Murdaugh? What's up his sleeves, right? They should give him short sleeves all the time so we can make sure there's nothing up his sleeves. He should be wearing tank tops for the rest of his life. But back in front of Judge Newman, who's getting close to retirement, and you know, these two have a history now, obviously, and a big part of him wanting to get a new trial is to get Judge Newman off the case. Didn't want Judge Newman on this case to begin with. Feels like, I guess, the judge has it in for him for whatever reason, although history has told us that Judge Newman, like the fairest judge, one of the fairest judges we've ever seen here on Court TV through the years. This isn't the only trial that we've seen his work, and I think it speaks for itself. But today was a wild day back in the Low Country of South Carolina. Alex Murdaugh getting another opportunity to speak. And we also got to hear from victims, the financial crimes, all this money he was stealing from people. And you think about who his victims were. In this case, these are people who really needed the money. People, you know, people make fun of and attack those attorneys you see in the commercials, personal injuries attorneys, plaintiffs' attorneys, but they do important work, like really important work, because people do get hurt. People do suffer incredible losses where they're not able to work, where they're not able to do things, they're not able to enjoy life the way they should because of what someone else did. And that's what our civil system is set up for. And a lot of these people, you know, they don't have the wherewithal on their own to try to make their life closer to where it should be after these horrific injuries that they've suffered. And that's who he was stealing from. That's whose money he was taking, the people he was defrauding, people who trusted him. Also taken from his law firm as well. So we're going to talk about what happened in court today. We're also going to talk about Becky Hill. What about Becky? What is going on in the investigation? Because that will directly impact the double murder conviction. You know, all of this is related. So we're going to get into what's going on with Becky Hill. But first, we're going to talk about what happened in court today in the Low Country. As I said, back in front of Judge Newman. And Judge Newman, I think he's hoping for the last time in court with Alex Murdaugh. Take a listen.
It was September of 2021 when the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court assigned me to preside over the pending investigations involving the various offenses that you are being investigated for, initially including these financial crimes and the murder cases. And I have lived with this case now for over 2 years, and I have 34 days left before active retirement. And after imposing this sentence, your life will continue. I will turn the page and leave you behind. You're quite an enigma, a person that many of us thought we knew. And as I stated earlier, I can only recall you as being a fun-loving, happy person. I've never seen you sad. I've never seen you being anything other than a friendly, caring person. And it's so disappointing to see you again in this setting. I believe the last time we saw each other and you were not in jail was at a conference when you were poolside having a good time. And as it turns out, that was a couple of months after the passing of your wife and son. But you were having a good time, made nothing of it, and then the Labor Day weekend events occurred, and next thing I know, I'm assigned to preside over all of your matters. Not only your matters, but others as well. And we started out with over 100 charges, indictments against various folks, and we've whittled that down to just a handful outstanding. And I'm happy to turn the page and turn, not turn the remnants over to anyone else, but to certainly turn over anything pending against you to someone else. You have one 20-year sentence and a consecutive 7-year sentence for a total sentence of 27 years. Most of the offenses pled to are serious offenses under the law, subjects you to this 3 strikes law. You are given credit for time served pursuant to Section 241340 to be calculated by the South Carolina Department of Corrections.
It's still shocking to me, though. It's still shocking to me that someone who was born into what he was born into and given so much ends up taking so much from others, including the lives of 2 members of his family. Let's bring in Court TV legal correspondent Chanley Painter, joining us live tonight from the Low Country. Was down inside the courtroom for all of this. It was a big day. That was the ending of Alex Murdaugh's financial crimes case right there. But a lot happened before that today, so I want to get into that with you, Chanley. Let's start first with Alex Murdaugh himself. And what did he have to say today?
Vinny, it was really unlike any sentencing hearing that I've attended when the defendant rises to make a statement, asked to turn towards the gallery and speak directly to the victims who showed up to speak against him at the sentencing. And he rambled on, almost like relishing the time in the spotlight. center of attention in the courtroom for nearly an hour. A lot of the times I would look to the victim's family members and they would be rolling their eyes or nodding their heads, some even answering him verbally to some of the things that he would say as he looked directly at them for most of the time and apologized. Let's take a listen to some of his statement.
I hope that the time will come when you can look back and know that despite the things that I did, that I care about each one of you. Because I do. I did terrible things. Each of you placed your trust in me. I was very proud of that. And I'm still today honored by that fact that I deceived each of you. My wife loved you. And you are absolutely right about everything you said. But you are dead wrong about one thing. And I would never hurt Maggie, and I would never hurt Paul. And it is important to me that you know that. Well, Buster, I am so sorry that I let you down. I am so sorry that I have not been able to be with you during such hard times. I am so sorry that I did so many things that are so contradictory to every single thing Mom and I ever taught you and Paul.
And Vinny, remember during his double murder trial, testimony from his colleagues, and they would brag about Alex Murdaugh's talent in front of a jury, delivering closing arguments in many of the civil trials that he then turned and stole millions from his clients. About 30, 40 minutes in, that's sitting in the courtroom, that's what I thought about. Is this the Alex Murdaugh that we're watching, someone who just turned it back on for the world to see?
And I remember those descriptions that he would be able to cry as an attorney representing his clients,
yes,
cry in front of the jury. And that's kind of what we were seeing there today.
Exactly what I thought of as I watched him deliver, and it did drone on to the point that some people actually got up and left the gallery as he continued to speak, Vinny.
And another important part, he's still denying the murders. And it seemed like he was, do we know who he was directly addressing at that moment in denying and saying, I want to make sure you know that? Was it the whole crowd?
Yes. He first brought it up when he was responding to the victim impact statements of his best friend growing up, Jordan Jinks, one of the most powerful statements we heard today in the courtroom, because Jordan Jinks said that it wasn't until, betraying his trust, stealing money from him, and then hearing what he heard in the murder trial that he believes Alex Murdaugh is a different person. And Alex, when he first started to speak, he pointed to Jordan Jinks and says, "You're dead wrong. I would never hurt Mags and Pawpaw." He kept using those terms over again, and he said it a couple of times during his speech inside the courtroom today. He even said it was but for his opioid addiction, Vinny, and the money that he was spending that caused him to have to steal all this money from his clients, that put him on the radar. He blames that as making him the #1 suspect in the murders of his wife and son, instead of the resources going to find what he said was the true murderer or murderers.
Yeah, he lied about where he was at the time of the murders. I mean, we can't forget that. Okay, so you mentioned the victim impact statements, and that's obviously always, from my perspective, and I think everyone's perspective, the most important part of a sentencing hearing. What happened today?
To be in the courtroom, this was the victim's day in court. I spoke to many of them after the conclusion of the hearing, and they told me about how this was healing to them to be able to stand, Vinny, to look this man in the eye and tell them whatever they wanted to say, including, I said, Jordan Jinks, who their fathers were best friends. They were best friends growing up, as well as the sons of his former housekeeper who died in the trip and fall at Moselle. Let's take a listen.
I've been waiting on this day to look in your eyes. What kind of animal are you? I'm not here to be your judge. Ultimately, that belongs to the good Lord and Savior. But may He have mercy on your soul. The money you stole from me, you could have asked me for it, and I would have gave it to you if that's how I felt about you and your family. You didn't have to steal it from me, man.
You lied, you cheated, you stole, you betrayed me and my family and everybody else. And you did it at a cost of my mom's death, first of all. A couple Octobers ago, you wrote a half-hearted, I'm sorry letter, which was half-hearted because your actions did not follow through that you were really sorry. So I'm going to read you. I have an apology. I'm sorry that you feel like you had to betray us, steal from us, cheat us, and lie to us.
Even while the victims, and many of them, did not mince words towards Alex Murdaugh, Vinny, the overwhelming theme throughout their entire speeches was forgiveness. They overwhelmingly forgiving him for what he did and accepting his apologies.
Just good people. They're good people. And he took advantage of that. He absolutely took advantage of that. What I like about the way they did this today, and they don't do it in all jurisdictions, and I know different jurisdictions have different rules, but allowing victims to speak directly to the defendant, that's the way to do it, to be able to look at him, not run everything through the court. To me, that's not what that process should be about. They're victims. Give them a moment to heal. And as you said, that's how they felt today, and I think it's because of the way Judge Newman allowed them to do that. So how about after the sentencing today?
Well, we heard some reaction from both sides. Of course, Murdaugh's attorney spoke to a gaggle of media outside this courthouse, and I actually caught up with the star prosecutor, Creighton Waters, and this is what both sides had to tell us.
The whole pattern of his borrowing and spending would indicate he was spending the money on something, we believe drugs, and if you look at the checks just written to Eddie Smith and other people we know he bought drugs from, it's almost $5 million of money that was written either drug dealer or written to drug dealers. And, you know, and the rest was spent on paying back a loan. I mean, look, if you go through it, there's no extra money there.
The deal that we worked out would be 27 consecutive at 85%. So to get those numbers where they are, that was what the deal was going to be. I think for Alec, you'd have to ask him what his motives are. Ultimately, maybe there's a slight chance that he gets the murder convictions flipped. But if that happens, we're just going to retry him. So, you know, what he gains from this, you have to ask him. What we gain is finality and certainty and a result that is more heavy for these types of offenses than anyone can ever remember, state or federal, across the country.
I love it when he said they're just going to retry him. And he went on to say that the testimony he gave in the first trial would be used against him in the second one, Vinny. And so what is next? Well, we're going to wait for when that evidentiary hearing may take place, as Murdaugh's defense is trying to overturn his double murder conviction based on alleged jury tampering allegations by the clerk of court. The Supreme Court here has yet to assign a new judge to that. Plus, Vinny, his federal sentencing for the federal financial crimes similar to these, as well as the charges in the county for that roadside shooting. So this is not the end of Alex Murdaugh.
Chanley Painter in her home away from home, the low country of South Carolina. Thank you so much. All right, folks, when we come back, we're going to talk to some more folks down in the Low Country about what happened today. Becky Hill's investigation, that's coming up in a little bit. Plus, coming up next hour. In Fremont County, Idaho, the so-called doomsday prophet Chad Daybell due back in court as he gets ready for his murder trial. He wants cameras inside for the world to see everything. What will he argue to the jury? Will he blame his wife Lori and her dead brother Alex? And will he expose their strange relationship?
He would pick her up and she'd wrap her legs around his waist and he would kind of bounce her up and down on himself.
Okay.
In front of me, and they would moan and simulate sex acts.
I've worked hard all my life. I've gone from being a local reporter to becoming a law student to then even going on to teach other lawyers, all before I came to Court TV. As a journalist, lawyer, and teacher, I learned the secret to success is speaking in your authentic voice. And I bring that lesson to my show, Opening Statements, every morning on Court TV.
Opening Statements with Julie Grant. Weekday mornings at 8, 7 Central, only on Court TV.
There was all this about pretrial publicity, that somehow I caused pretrial publicity and others and people who wrote about it and podcasters or whatever. Boy, is that rich. The defense attorney himself's a podcaster. He started a podcast after the murder trial. They went to CrimeCon and they talked for 2 days about the case. They've done press conferences. They've done documentaries. They've gone on TV. If there's any pretrial publicity, it's caused in part by them. And they still came before you to say that Mr. Murdaugh couldn't get a fair trial.
Eric Bland on fire inside the courtroom down in the Low Country today, representing his clients who were giving their victim impact statements and addressing everything that Alex Murdaugh has done to all of these folks. And guess who's joining us right now from Columbia, South Carolina? The attorney representing Gloria Satterfield's family and the host of the Cup of Justice podcast, Eric Bland, with us. Eric, great to see you. Big day today. A lot of finality. I sort of got the feeling. What was your feeling inside that courtroom today? Like, what was the vibe you were getting as you're up there and Alex Murdaugh is up there giving his spiel?
Thank you for having me on, Vinny. My partner Ronnie and I, who you're going to have on in a minute, we've been waiting basically 2 years to give Alex the verbal smackdown that he deserved. The courtroom was receptive to what we were saying and what the other attorneys and victims were saying, that Alex is this kind of unicorn of a criminal. He belongs on the Mount Rushmore of all criminals. He hit for the cycle. He was convicted of money laundering, fraud, theft, breach of trust, and then ultimately murder. So he is a unique criminal. He preys on vulnerable people. You know, this isn't an Enron crime where it's a faceless victim where you're, stealing money from shareholders. These are people that are directly in front of him, people that are family members, the pseudo-family members like the Satterfields, people who are his clients, long-term friends. Jordan Jinks, one of our clients, has been friends with him since he's been 8 years old. So the victims had a mouthful that they want to unload on him. But Alex used this as a filibuster. Chanley was right. He spoke for an hour. I was actually the one that got up because I just said, I've had enough of this horse crap. And I used another word. My partner Ronnie tried to hold me back. But when he tried to change the narrative on what happened to Gloria Satterfield, when he was telling everybody that he is not a murderer, and then he started to speak to Buster, what this was about was a PR campaign. Alex has a motion for a new trial coming up, and he wants to change the perception that people have of him. He did not do a good job in the murder trial. He wants to show that he is a likable guy. He showed contrition, but it's all an act with a narcissist, and it came out loud and clear. Judge Newman didn't believe it. No one in that courtroom believed Alex. Now, he believes it because he said, I'm thankful for people who email me and send me messages and letters and, say such nice things about me. But the only people I think that believe Alex's BS is Alex and maybe his lawyers. But nobody else in that courtroom, certainly not Judge Newman.
I want you to respond to something that Dick Harpootlian said today, and this is sort of at the beginning of today's proceedings about how it should actually be done. Take a listen.
I'm concerned from what I read in social media about some of the lawyers making comments today. Some of them are they're going to express anger against me and Mr. Griffin and Mr. Murdaugh. Some of them are nakedly using this as an infomercial to sell coffee cups or T-shirts or bobbleheads in an effort to maximize their economic return on this process. I would ask the court either to have the victim speak or the attorneys, but not both. And if the attorneys do speak, they address their comments to you and not to us. And their comments should exhibit the demeanor of this courtroom, not some sort of marketing ploy. Thank you.
What'd you think of that comment by
That was meant for me. That was meant for me. I have a merchandise site, but all of our proceeds, all the proceeds go to charity, 3 charities, Wounded Warriors, the Israeli Defense Fund, as well as a no-kill pet shelter. So this was done to raise money for charities. Dick Harpootlian gets paid to go to CrimeCon. I don't make an apology for the fact that I have gained some notoriety, a lot of it, as my partners said when he got up to speak. But we didn't come there today to sell T-shirts, okay? That's not what we did. We came there to speak on behalf of our clients. Ronnie and I represent 6 victims, Vinny, not just people who had money stolen, but people who had their cases blown with the statute of limitations because Alex didn't file the cases on time. Really good personal injury cases. So we weren't coming there to sell anything. Dick Harpootlian didn't want to hear it, but he is as much of the problem as Alex has been in this case, and he hasn't done Alex any favors.
All right, stay with us. We're going to bring in some more guests. Joining us from Charleston, South Carolina, Eric's partner and part of the Satterfield family's legal team and the other victims. Ronnie Richter is with us. And in Columbia, South Carolina, a criminal defense attorney who represents some of the jurors from Murdaugh's murder trial. And you saw him in the courtroom every day. Joe McCulloch is with us. Great to see everyone today. Joe, let me go to you first and get your response to what happened today. Was this a day for justice down in the Low Country?
Oh, I think so. Today was for the victims, and it was sad and raw and long-winded. Unfortunately, the prosecution took an hour and a half of kind of gilding the lily, and I think that was contagious, and Alex Murdaugh caught it. And in probably the most unconvincing hour of apologies I've seen in years and years, it's one of the few times I've been in a courtroom where everyone in the courtroom appeared to want him to burst into flames. He didn't ring a bell. He didn't make a friend. He didn't convince a soul. And, that's the end of the Murdaugh magic, perhaps, or at least this Murdaugh.
Ronnie Richter, your thoughts about what took place today inside that courtroom. I saw tears from Alex Murdaugh, but I've heard stories that he would cry in front of juries when he was trying to win cases for his clients.
Well, we know he can turn it on, Vinny. We saw him do it at the murder trial continuously. Tears like it's Hollywood-style tears. What I saw was a man who was admitting only that which cannot be denied, that he was doing it at the end of the barrel of a gun, that he was doing it when he was out of options, when he was out of time. So he had both shoulders pinned to the mat. He was 9 beats into a 10 count, and he finally admitted to crimes for which there was no defense. So it's hard to watch him. As hard as I wanted to, I would like to believe him. But I believe that Judge Newman said it best when he said, after hearing all of this commentary, he told Alex directly, I don't think that you know yourself. And that was the feeling, that Alex is that person in the room who really does not understand how he is perceived and how he is received.
I want to play another couple pieces of what happened today. It's going to be a little bit of what Eric said, and then we're going to hear from Alex Murdaugh as well. Let's watch.
Gloria, you know, I get very frustrated when I hear that she was just a housekeeper. She was so much more than that. I think Alex would agree she was so much more than that. She helped raise their kids, Maggie and Alex's kids, Paul and Buster. She was a good woman. She was a good mother to Brian and Tony. And Alex exploited that woman, the woman who was in his house, the woman who helped raise his kids. He exhibited this type of predatory behavior.
Mr. Bland, Maggie and I raised our two boys with input from her mom and dad and input from my mom and dad. But we are the people who raised those boys. And us alone. With the help of my sister. Now, with that being said, Eric, with that being said, there is no person, period, that was more important to my family than Gloria was.
Eric, what'd you think of that moment?
He completely took the words wrong. I said that she helped raise the kids as they were growing up. And he came back at me and said, we raised the kids. That's just simply not true. It's not true by Paul's own words as he was growing up and Maggie's. So, you know, this is Alex rewriting history. It just didn't happen that way. And quite frankly, I had enough of it. And I got up and said, it's enough of this horse crap.
Joe, why is Alex Murdaugh, when he does all this, is this just him? Do you think his attorneys are trying to stop him or encouraging him? How do you think all of this is happening?
Well, you know, in all the years I've practiced, when you get to this point in a trial, your client gets to make the decision of whether they want to talk or not. Sometimes it's good and sometimes it's bad. In this case, it didn't make any difference because the sentence was 27 years when we walked in the door, and it was 27 years when we walked out. The die was cast. So this was a choreographed woodshedding, but more importantly, it gave the victims finality. It gave them an opportunity to vent, to confront. But Alex Murdaugh took it as an opportunity to say what he had to say, which was, again, to deny his complicity in the murders, whatever his role was there, whether he pulled the trigger, actively involved, or whatever. But I mean, he seized the moment when the going gets weird, the weird go pro, and he went pro today, but he didn't convince anybody. And it didn't work at trial, his testimony, and it did not work again today.
So, Ronnie, what's been the overall impact of all of this? Like, I was down there. This is a small community, right? As I'm talking to people, and then, you know, whether it's the prosecutor and the defendant, like they went to law school together, like everyone kind of knows each other, has to work with each other. This thing has gotten very emotional, bitter at times. What's the overall impact, do you think, on justice in the Low Country, whether it's people looking for justice or lawyers working with one another?
Yeah, I think in South Carolina, at least in the short run, it was shattered. I mean, we were a laughingstock. We were rubes. You know, Alec epitomized every terrible lawyer joke that you've ever heard. You know, thankfully for Judge Newman, we saw in the murder trial, you know, the graceful administration of justice, and I think he did a great service to the state of South Carolina to restore some